What is the en passant rule in chess? Have you ever wondered how a pawn can capture another pawn that seems to have skipped past it? This is where the en passant rule comes into play. En passant is a unique pawn capturing rule in chess that allows a pawn to capture an opponent's pawn that has just moved 2 squares forward from its starting position. This move allows the opponent's pawn to bypass the square where it could have been captured. Let's break down how this works. When a pawn moves forward 2 squares from its original position, it may pass an adjacent enemy pawn that is positioned on the 5th rank for white or the 4th rank for black. If the enemy pawn could have captured it had it moved only 1 square forward, the enemy pawn is allowed to capture it en passant, which means in passing in French. This capture must happen immediately on the next move. If the player does not capture en passant at that moment, the opportunity is lost. The capturing pawn then moves to the square over which the opponent's pawn passed, and the opponent's pawn is removed from the board. It is important to note that en passant is the only capture in chess where the capturing piece moves to a square that was not occupied by the captured piece. This rule was introduced to maintain balance in the game after pawns were allowed to move to squares on their first move. Without this rule, a pawn could safely bypass an enemy pawn's attack by jumping to squares, thus avoiding capture. En passant prevents this by allowing the capturing pawn to take the opponent's pawn as if it had moved only 1 square. This rule is an important tactical element in chess and is often seen in competitive play. Players need to be attentive to the opponent's pawn moves and recognize when the en passant capture is possible. In essence, en passant is a special pawn capture that occurs when an opponent's pawn moves 2 squares forward from its starting position and passes an adjacent pawn that could have captured it had it moved only 1 square. The capturing pawn can then capture it immediately on the next move by moving diagonally to the square the opponent's pawn skipped over. Understanding this rule can add an exciting layer to your chess strategy.